To help you build your best six-pack, I'll be ranking exercises based on these 5 scientific criteria, and at the end of the video, I'll reveal the single best ab builder.
First up, we have the all-time classic, the crunch. Basically the partial range of motion equivalent of its big brother, the sit-up. Now, this is the basic exercise, and it's not great. It's where most people start with their ab training, but it's not the best option for a few reasons. 1. Limited stretch and limited resistance in stretch. 2. Limited loadability. I could guy a plate, but eventually that becomes real tiresome real fast compared to alternatives. The loadability is even worse when you consider how easy the crunch is. The sit-up is slightly harder, but not by much. That being said, nearly everyone can do this exercise in some form, so at least it's accessible, but it has basically nothing else going for it. So the crunch goes into low C tier, and the sit-up goes into mid C tier. There are many better exercises than the traditional crunch and the sit-up, but that's because of anatomy. See, the abs, aka the rectus abdominis, is responsible for spinal flexion primarily, whereas the obliques are primarily responsible for lateral flexion and spinal rotation. Keep that in mind. That informs which exercises are best for stretching the abs under resistance. Keeping with crunches and sit-ups and bodyweight exercises, we have the plank. And the plank might be a worse exercise yet. It's even harder to load unless you have a friend around, which I don't. It doesn't provide a great stretch. You have to do it forever to get close to failure. And there's actually a fair bit of stabilization involved by other muscles that you don't necessarily want to train, but get fatigued anyways, so not ideal. Minimal stretch, hard to load, a lot of stabilization by the muscles. For those reasons, it's pretty much high B tier. Oh, didn't catch you there. See, you can make a plank even worse by adding in a cardio element for no reason. No tension in the stretch, a lot of extra movement for no reason. No real stretch on the abs, not loadable whatsoever. Yeah, low detail. But let's say you're looking for a solid beginner ab exercise with just body weight. What can you really do? Well, the lying leg raise is a pretty solid option. Place your hands under your glutes for some extra stretch, extend your spine for more stretch, lift it up. Fortunately, because of the movement arms involved, at the bottom is where the exercise is hardest. And it gets easier as you lift the legs up. Good stretch emphasis, no other major muscles involved in stabilization. It's a pretty good choice. This one has a big limitation though, and that's loadability. Like many bodyweight movements, you can't really load this one. So unless you find yourself still in your early phases of fitness, this probably won't be challenging enough to push you close to failure within a reasonable number of reps. All that considered, I think low B tier is pretty reasonable. Man, I wish there was a way to make lying leg raises more difficult. And there is, using physics. By grabbing something and increasing the moment arm, and doing some sort of dragon flag candlestick variation, you're able to make the movement much more challenging. And all of a sudden, you have great stretch emphasis, a great amount of loadability. Most people can't do these stricter than me, mind you, I'm not that strong, for many reps. You have a pretty solid movement on your hands. There is a bit more stabilization involved than if you just did a lying leg raise, but overall, that trade-off is worth making. Additional loadability, minor emphasis in stabilization required. Overall, solid A tier, high A tier. Because I'm not that strong, I tuck my legs, get up, and control the eccentric. If you're strong enough, you can get the whole rep properly. The final tip on this exercise, try and extend your spine first as you come down to get a good stretch on your abs on the whole way down. There's another way to make the lying leg raise more challenging, and that's by just turning it 90 degrees and making it hanging instead. And this is not as good of an option as you might think. In fact, I think it's one of the most overrated ab exercises. Why is that? Well, not only am I too tall to do these comfortably in this gym, but also your dead hand actually takes quite a bit of energy to perform. Just try this right now. This is quite unstable and also involves my forearms and lats quite a bit more than usual. Yes, you can use straps and reduce that element to a good extent, but you're also reducing resistance in the stretch. Not only are you getting more fatigue, you're also getting a worse stimulus. At the bottom, it's quite difficult to get into a spinally extended position, and even if I did, there's not really much going on down there. So, stretch emphasis gets worse, stabilization required gets worse. It's probably just a bad movement. Now, what would happen if you combined a lying leg raise with a crunch? Well, you get a V-up, and it's a good alternative to making the leg raise more challenging by just doing candlestick. The V-up keeps the stretch emphasis of the lying leg raise, but simplifies adding weight. Just grab a plate, put it in your hands, and you've got yourself extra resistance. More loadability to an already decent exercise, A tier. And for our final contestant, for ab growth, we have the cable crunch. And I think this might just be the single best ab exercise. You can do it in nearly any gym. You can focus on getting into full spinal extension, which allows you to get a maximum stretch in. It's also plenty loadable, as in, you'll never be able to max out the stack unless you're very strong. You can use straps to make it more comfortable on your little fingers, which is nice. Granted, there is some stabilization required by your lats and even your biceps, but put that aside. You have a really time-efficient option. Plug and play. Plenty of stretch emphasis, plenty of loadability. You can find this in any gym ever, besides maybe open. It's probably the best ab exercise out there. Pro tip, set up the cable to be vertical to top and become more horizontal as you crunch down. This will increase resistance in the stretch and decrease it in the shortened position. A good alternative to cable crunches is the ab wheel rollout. All it takes is an ab wheel or even a barbell with some plates slapped on. This is a surprisingly good choice. While you don't get a maximum stretch at the bottom, you do get plenty of resistance at the bottom, which makes up for a lack of stretch. Now, the obvious downside is there is a fair bit of stabilization required by your triceps and by your lats. And you might also think that loadability is an issue. And yeah, sure, if you're weak like me, you can do them off your knees. But if you're very strong, you can try them off your feet. And then they become ungodly difficult.
Next up, we have the machine crunch. And machine crunch is a pretty variable exercise. If you get a nice machine, it can easily turn into an S tier exercise. But get the wrong one, and it turns into a C tier exercise at best. See, most machines don't allow you to get a full stretch and get into full spinal extension. But if you get the right machine, it's actually a great movement. Plenty of stretch, plenty of resistance in the stretch, no major other muscle groups like think about first. It's very time efficient, you just select the weight and get going. And it's even beginner friendly, in that even if you don't have a ton of ab strength relative to your body weight to begin with, you can still try this movement and in all likelihood get a solid ab training stimulus in. For those reasons, I'm going to put the machine crunch into mid A tier.
Moving on to oblique training. First, we have Russian twists. And this is one I started out with when I was a beginner. And to be honest, that's all they're really good for. They're just not challenging enough to really do anything. And no matter how much weight you hold, if you've been training for a while, probably not loadable enough to really bother with. Look, if you have the weight at hand to do these, you're probably better off doing the dumbbell side bends I'm about to mention in a second. C tier. D tier. Now, I may not have a rotary torso machine, but you know what I got? This piece of shit. Wood choppers. They're not great. They're like a rotary torso machine with more fatigue from holding the thing with your arms, struggling to get a range of motion. It's just not a great exercise. I think there's almost no worse oblique exercise besides Russian twists. C tier. And now, for what I think might just be the single best oblique exercise. The dumbbell side bend. Not only do you get some oblique training in here, you also get some lower back training in, which most people don't train the lower back, but really should for overall aesthetics. Grab a dumbbell, and bend sideways without moving your hips. All the way down, pause, and come up. It's that simple. You have a dumbbell, you have a kettlebell, you can do these. They're loadable, they get a full stretch. What more do you want? They're also highly time efficient. You just grab a dumbbell and you get going. Stabilization required, there's some, but you can use a strap and all of a sudden your forearms aren't limiting factor. It's just a solid exercise. You can do it anywhere. And I think it's S tier for obliques. Yeah, so.
What about the rotary torso machine or the oblique training machine? As you'll notice, there is no B-roll of this because I don't have one in my commercial gym and I don't have one in the Wolfpack gym either. Well, the rotary torso machine does train the obliques fairly well. It trains them through spinal rotation. However, it's typically difficult to set up the machine to get a reasonable stretch at the start of the rep. And that final bit of the rep, when you really squeeze your obliques, is actually by far the hardest part. With that being said, they are pretty time efficient in that you just select a weight and you get going, they're pretty stable and that no other major muscle groups can give out, but they're just not my top pick compared to something like a dumbbell side bend, which allows you to train your obliques from anywhere in the world as long as you have dumbbells or kettlebells. Compared to most bodyweight options, the rotary torso machine is quite loadable, which is a good thing. For those reasons, the rotary torso machine goes into high beta. Let someone else take care of it. Milo, the coach in your pocket. The smartest coach in your pocket on the market right now. I'm telling you now, there is no smarter app
out there right now. There's nothing else like it. We've been working on it for 3 years, and it's taking all the latest science on how to build muscle and putting it into an app that costs a fraction of the cost of an actual coach. And it's launching soon. Go to myadopt.com now to register your interest and be notified when it launches and receive both a free trial and a lifetime discount if you choose to sign up. myadopt.com, go check it out. In my opinion, the single most underrated exercise for the abs remains the cable crunch. Now you might be saying, I see plenty of people do the cable crunch in my gym. How is it possibly underrated? Well, if you perform it properly, it becomes much better than you think. I sang all its praises earlier, but that's in the context of doing the movement right. Performed right, you get a great stretch, plenty of resistance in the stretch, no other major muscles that can really give out, accessible in most gyms. It's just a phenomenal exercise. All ab exercises rated. But one clothing brand that is S tier is Rascal Apparel. Buy the fucking clothing! Please, use code WOLF at checkout for 10% off. Honestly, the best clothing I've ever worn. If you'd like me to coach you, consider taking a look at the link above to see what I offer. Dr. Milo Wolf, ab exercises rated. Until next time.